Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Jeanne Birdsall. Jeanne is the author of the celebrated Penderwick series, the instant classic that sold over 2.2 million copies. Her books have won numerous accolades, including the prestigious National Book Award for Young People's Literature. Her work's been translated into multiple languages and continues to delight readers around the world, including this one. She's here today to talk about her newest release, The Library of Unruly Treasures, a love letter to magic, family, friendship, and adventure. I cannot wait to talk about this delightful book with her, so let's get right to the episode. Jeanne, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. I'm going to call the Library of Unruly Treasures Loud from now on because I'll forget. That's what I call it. So I'm just warning you, Loud is also about libraries. So you
Yes,
do, yes.
yes.
Okay.
That is,
So
I think, one of the best parts for this book lover about the book.
yeah, the funny story, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this yet, but a funny story is that when my editor and I were trying to come up with the title, and it was a real struggle for some reason. She said, well, if you put library in the title, every librarian in the country is going to want the book. And I'm like, I'm not selling out. I'm not selling out. But it turned out to be the very best title it could be.
Yes,
Okay. So
yes.
I am Jeanne Birdsall. I did not start writing until I was in my late 40s. I was always an avid, crazed reader, though, from the time I was little. And I wasn't one of those kids that, oh, I was reading Moby Dick at 3. It's just that once I could learn to read, that's pretty much all I did. And my childhood wasn't the happiest, and my family was not the happiest. And what the solace that these books gave me were about, a lot of them, most of them were about families. And it allowed me to sort of creep into them. But I think it was more that it helped me understand that there were families out there that worked in a way that mine didn't, and that it probably wasn't my fault that mine wasn't working. And that's a pretty, I say that now like it came clear at 9, and I don't think it did, but that's that was a really important thing for me. So when I did all sorts of weird, strange jobs, and I did a lot of photography, and I was single and didn't have children, and then reconnected with this guy I'd been in high school with, and he tricked me into starting to help him write a book about high school. It was his way of wooing me, and it worked. We got married, and eventually I said, I want to write. I've always wanted to write a book about children, and I never, or for children. I never, it was like it had never been in my head, like, this is what I want to do. But once I'd started writing, I thought that's where my heart started, and that's where it started. So I started working on the Penderwicks, and I made them a family that was definitely not perfect, and they had this big gaping wound of a mom who was no longer there, but that they had love and respect for each other, and their dad had respect for them, and they were a good enough family that they kept bringing other people into the family. The very first book, they brought in this lonely rich kid, and the second book they brought, well, I shouldn't spoil it, but until the last book, there was just these gobs of people running around. So I decided to do that, and I lived in Massachusetts, and I wanted there to be four sisters, and so the obvious reference point was Little Women. So I started there and worked for years and years and years, and I thought I would never get published. This was my practice book, and
Yeah.
then somehow my practice book uh, got published and won the National Book Award, and so I got to I'd always wanted to write five or six books about them, and then all of a sudden that was allowed, and that's sort of what happened with the Penderwicks. And it was wonderful. The Penderwicks have been a big part of my life, and I am not writing another book about them, in case anybody wants to ask. No plans. I mean, never say never, but I'm 74, and I can sort of say never about certain things, like mountain climbing and probably writing another Penderwicks book. But so I'd had an idea for another book throughout the last couple of Penderwicks books that had been brewing in my mind, and with a slight touch of the not real in it. I don't even want to say magic, but
Mm.
the not real, because uh, um, when I was killed, I loved the family stories. I also really, really loved the stories, particularly E. Nesbit and Edward Eager, where kids are just living their lives and things are going on, and then all of a sudden they pick up a nickel and it's a half magic kind of thing, and they don't escape into this whole different fantasy world. It's just the magic just sort of casually and often semi-catastrophically comes into their lives. One of my favorite things that I always think about from E. Nesbit is these kids could get a wish every day, and they wished that they had wings. And so, which, for me, wings are big. That shows up in loud. And so they're kids, so they're flying around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, we're hungry. We're tired. And they landed on the roof of a church, and they hadn't left enough time because the magic always ends at sunset. So the wings disappear. They're on the roof of a church. They have to steal food from the parsonage, and the parson gets it. It's the setting up rather than big fantasy and big chaos and big scary things of just putting kids in a slightly ridiculous situation and seeing what happens. That's what I like the best. And that's what I've done with Lout. That's this 11-year-old girl named Gwen whose parents are awful, and they're sending her away to stay for a few weeks with a great uncle. She's never met him, and he turns out to be really nice. And then there turn out to be these small flying creatures who greet her as their hero. And she has to find them a new home and save them and all this stuff. And she's 11 years old. She's short for her age. She's been moving around all her life. And all of a sudden, she has to figure out how to be a hero. And it was so much fun to write. It was just so much fun. I think I just talked for about a half an hour.
And I
How?
loved every word. I loved
Okay.
every word. And I want to jump in and follow up on that. It was so fun comment. It certainly was fun as a reader, but what I would love to ask, especially because of the we don't want to call it magic. It feels so real in that library. How did you come up with that? How did you develop that? There's so much in there that there's a pronunciation guide at the end, right? To
Yes,
help
there
piece
is.
it together. So I'd love for you to just talk about that world for a minute.
Well, first of all, it took me a very long time. It took me 8 years because I thought I went into it thinking that I could do what those old writers had done, which is say, oh, here's a magic turtle, and the turtle says this, and you never really know, are there other magic turtles? What's he do when he's not with the kids? Does he like spaghetti? I mean, it's just there. It's part of the thing. And I thought I could do that, but once these creatures, the Leducan, started becoming in my mind, I needed to know everything about them, and I needed to know their history because everything they were saying had to do with who they were and their history and how they got into America. And and the more I dove in, the more fascinating it was. They started out just being these creatures from Scotland, but they then it turned out they needed to have arisen in Mesopotamia. And I had to learn more about Mesopotamia than I'd ever known, not to mention the history of Scotland. So part of it is for me is that I need everything in a book I write to possibly be true.
Mhm.
So with these creatures, you and I know they're not real. But if they were real, what are the physics and how would they wander through the world and how would they eat and how would they get clothes? I needed that all to make sense. So that's part of it. That's the kind of reader I am. But also, I just love research. I love researching things that I'm interested in. I didn't like being in school because I was always supposed to be researching things I wasn't interested in.
Right.
But once I'm like, okay, that's a person and an eagle before time began, came together, and then I'm like off and running. And it's just the really fun part was that as their past became more alive and more detailed and more real to me, the way that they communicated with Gwen, the 11-year-old girl, became got more became richer because these are two different species
Yeah.
and they can speak English. They have their own language. They can speak English. And she really never quite knows what they're talking about. And but she has fallen in love with them. She's going to do anything for them. And she tries really hard to work around the differences, even when she's going like, and I think that was really fun. And I just did it because it was fun, but it's also really kind of about life. You know, there are
Mhm.
all these people that are so different than us. And how do you navigate that? And how do you navigate it when you're a child? You know, how do you figure out? It's really about empathy, I guess. I don't like talking about it that way because then it sounds like I'm writing a guidance counselor book, and it is so not that. But she had to be able to see things from their viewpoint, which is being 8 inches high, which is really different.
Yes.
Yeah.
I I just love how you said like the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, is this isn't true, right? But it just the deep dive you took just made it as a reader, especially a reader. I've always struggled as a kid to read fantasy. I want
Mhm.
things to make sense and I
Yes.
want them to
Thank you.
be real. And reading this book, with the element of not so magic, but magic. Like my 47-year-old self was all in. I was all in. And I
Oh,
love,
that's what I like hearing. Yeah.
yes, yes. What I think my favorite piece about it, or the favorite part around that, is that they've been around for a long time in that library. And, as the librarian explains, like, they don't understand, but it's like this imaginary friend, this imaginary game that just keeps going and going and going through generations. And we don't know how they do it. And it was just the best to see the adults like rally around it and even
Hmm.
support it, because this is the cool thing about this library that just made it so special when that came together. The kids in there talking and the adults and their support of it. That's what really made it even more magical and delightful for me. I was like,
Oh,
this is real. We're doing this.
I have to tell you that the librarian, Ms. Lexi, her last name, Kennick, comes from a real children's book librarian at the Boston Public Library. She's head of children's services. I'm sure I got that wrong, the title, Laura Kennick. And I found her on Twitter, speaking of Twitter, and she has a garden and she had this dog and all these wonderful pictures. And I just started getting entranced with her. And she posted a picture once of her whole staff. They were standing on some steps at the Boston Public Library, and they were standing up straight with their arms to their sides, and they were dressed as crayons with little different colored crayon hats. And that's a children's librarian, that they are obviously highly professional, dealing with all sorts of millions of things, but there's some part of them that can believe that dressing up like a crayon is a really good thing to do.
Yes.
And I just went with that. And so Ms. Lexi, I think just having been around the Leduc and have been flying around listening to the stories she tells for all these years, and they just kind of changed her reality just a tiny bit, which is what books do,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, that is it right there. That is the whole gift right there that happens in the book that then books give us because we start to suspend our own disbelief and just get that what if that it's like little effervescent bubbles sometimes when I'm reading
Mhm.
like oh yes and that's the kind of feeling like I named the book as delightful and that was the effervescent bubbles that when I think about these little things and the connections between all of the kids and them and some of the things that happen with them. Like I think you said in the beginning, some were catastrophic or could have been catastrophic, right? There's lots of fun action in this book, along with those deeper themes of family and
Mhm.
family that can be hard and the respite I think that she feels when
Yeah.
she's with her uncle and
That's such a good word. Yeah.
that peace that she starts to get and starts to understand that it's possible for
Right.
her was the other
Exactly.
piece that just had my heart.
Right. Yeah. 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 And that she was courageous enough to give it up if she had to, which is
Yes.
also pretty. I was so proud of her. I just became so proud of her. I loved her so much, and so proud of the way she handled everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, another reason why books are so important because I don't know if my younger version of me would have felt or have done the same, but to consider, the reactions of the characters, the realities of other characters, and how that connects with your own life. They just offer so many opportunities for us to think, to be proud, to, get lost, but also learn, about ourselves and our surroundings and to find that same respite that she found with her uncle. I think we can all find in a book and especially this one. Like,
Thank you. That means the world to me. It really does.
I'm so
Because
glad.
that's what I got. This is one of those cliched paying forward things, but that's really what it is. And I can have a whole lot of fun at the same time
Yes.
and get to talk to people like you, which is like, it's so much fun. I wouldn't have been able to do this. I have to write a book so I can talk to cool people. It's kind of like
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think I've joked on the podcast before that I think you all have the best job writing the books, but mine is second best, which is reading them, talking to you, and then delivering them to every kid's hands who I think is the perfect match for them.
Mhm. Well, thank you. That's great.
Now, I also want to mention in the book, there are some beautiful images, and
Oh.
Matt has illustrated those. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about those in the book as well.
Well, Matt Phelan is this brilliant, wonderful illustrator who also have writer illustrator. He writes his own books too, who also happens to be a very good friend because we did a picture book together many years ago called Flora's Very Windy Day. And we that was with Clarion. And it was, they didn't even tell me that said somebody named Matt Fallon's going to do it. And I knew some of his art, so I said, well, that's really good. And then the images showed up, and I was absolutely blown away. First of all, for their beauty, and there's a lot of movement and flying and working in the air, and you can see that how that works with Lao, but also because we're 20 years apart, but it turned out that we grew up in neighboring counties in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
So these images of Flora and her little brother in the fall matched my memories, which was already just such this incredible link. So when Lout came along, I having a series like the Penderwicks, you get to ask for things. And I said I'd really like interior illustrations because that was such a cool thing when I was a kid to have the
Yeah.
pictures show up. They're like, okay. And I said, and I want Matt Fallon to do it. They're like, oh, okay. So I got to do another book with Matt, and he just, oh man. I mean, I talk about the flying, and he does that. Some of the things with the Leducan on the wing are just extraordinary.
Yes.
But he also, if you know his own graphic novels, he can do. I'm thinking particularly of Bluffton. He can put a whole world, a whole story into like one twitch of an eyebrow.
Hmm.
He doesn't have to overdo anything, and he's empathetic and has all that understanding, and it goes right from his heart into his pen.
Hmm.
And the way the way he illustrated, the way he came up with these characters, the first time I saw Gwen, I was like, wow, she's got freckles, and it just everything was so perfect. I have to tell you, I have a million favorites, but one of my very favorites is I don't want to spoil this story, but for some reason, which I won't tell you, Gwen is having to climb in to her bedroom through the window. And this neighboring boy that sort of terrifies her because she's so shy, and even though he's a nice guy, is watching her from behind. And because that's what Matt does. And you can tell just by his stance. He's like, what's she doing? It's kind of interesting. It's kind of funny. Should I say anything? I mean, it's all right. And all you can see are Gwen's legs and his back, and it's a whole
Yeah.
story. And that's my friend Matt Fallon, brilliant guy.
Yeah, it really is quite magical how he does that because the illustrations themselves, I want to say that they're simple, meaning they're simple in that when you look at them, you instantly know what is going on. You can picture it, you can see it, you can feel it. Like it gets the reader in. But there's so much complexity in the simplicity that it's like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, how did he do those in these like simple sketches, maybe is the way I want to say it, but literally capture the movement and the energy
yeah.
and the
The
imagination.
feeling and the
Yes.
feeling. Yeah,
Yes. He's
yeah.
captured that feeling.
Like
Yeah.
there were a lot of times when he just allowed Gwen to look annoyed or confused, and I loved that. Instead of like, oh, here, this is really fun when when they're all doing their weird Leducan thing, and she's like, what? He just I couldn't be happier with the whole thing.
Yeah.
What a package.
Yeah, it's a beautiful pairing. The feeling of the book, the imagination you get to sink into in the book, the library feel that you get thinking about the book. I just loved it. It's just beautiful. I'm so excited to be part of your launch of pushing it into everybody's hands. It's just delightful for both kids and adults.
Thank you. One thing I named Gwen's uncle Uncle Matthew. That's a reference to Anne of Green Gables. It took me like 2 years to go like, oh, wait a minute, Matt's name is also Matthew. It's like,
Oh,
oh, that's right. And then when the sketches of Uncle Matthew showed up, I was like, dude, he's you. You
yeah.
made he said, No, 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 no. I was trying to make him look like your husband. I was like, he looks nothing like my husband. It was just this whole coming together of souls and imagination, and it was just I couldn't be
Yeah.
luckier.
Yeah, exactly what it was supposed to be. It ended up being with all those connections.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, while I think we could keep talking about your book for quite some time, I would love to ask, what are you working on now? I know your book birthday was literally 2 days ago, the day of recording, but do you get to give us any sneak peeks into what you just keep tinkering with as you keep going?
Well, first of all, the books always really overlap. So the story I'm thinking about that I'm going to try to write, that's what they say, because who knows, has really been on my brain for years and years and years. Um, and I can't tell you much about it. I'm not even certain it's going to be for this age range, but the mafia's in it. How's that?
Oh,
And the FBI, and it's at this point, it's a 16-year-old girl who's working in a diner in 1967.
oh, wow.
And I know someone very well, who's very close to me, who was 16 in 1967 and who worked not in a diner, but in a Howard Johnson. So a lot of that stuff is coming through. Just to go back a little bit, when I started out, it was kind of like doing the first Penderwick's book, thinking nobody's ever going to publish this, so I can just have fun. I really let myself into with loud of nobody's ever going to like anything I do except the Penderwick. So just have a lot of fun with it, and don't constantly worry about comparisons. And so I'm doing exactly the same thing again, like just switching gears and just trying to keep from worrying about it. Now, if I live long enough, there's another book I have that comes after that that does go back to middle grade, and it's I have to wait until a lot of people pass on because it's a funny romantic laugh about the children's book world, and that's all I'm going to say. Nobody reading it would know who was who or anything, but I just store up these stories of
Mhm.
people. Oh, we all get so competitive and get our feelings hurt, and it's all so funny because it's like you're writing for 3 year olds. It's like, yeah, but so there. I just told you way more than I was supposed to, but it doesn't
I
matter.
I love it. I'm glad you did, but don't worry, we won't tell anyone.
No, we won't tell anybody.
Oh, well, where is the best place that listeners who want to find out more about you or just keep track of the books that may or may not be coming? Where's the best place to find you online?
Just my website, and I apologize for it being sparse and not giving out lots of information. I tried in the very beginning, and uh, everybody says it, but it's really true. Well, I'm just this old lady who gardens and stuff. There's nothing interesting to find out about me except that I'm still alive. Really, I'm still alive. And so I didn't want to make the books about my personality and my process
Mhm.
because I didn't like talking about it, and I thought it would muddy things. My favorite part of my website, other than the pictures of the dogs, are on the About You page. I have 5 or 6 black and white photographs from my childhood. And one of them I'm holding a Boston Terrier who we ended up having our own Boston Terrier, but our Boston Terrier ended up in Point Moet, the Penderwick's book. And there's one of me sewing, and I still sew, and there's one of me with a camera, and I still take pictures.
Love it. Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
did love those. Although I think my favorite is the picture that is right on the front. Just
Oh, I'm hugging my puppy.
the joyful connection between a human and their furry friend. Yes.
Yeah, he's gigantic now. He's 50 pounds. And if I tried to do him, if I try to hug him now, I'm like always a,
Yep.
but
Oh,
he's still
beautiful.
wonderful. Still wonderful.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, for coming on today to talk about your book. I'm so grateful to have the chance to meet you and to chat with you. And I love the book, and I know everybody else will too.
Thank you, Stephanie. And if there's anything I can do for you, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.